We talk about ourselves as a grassroots-led, multi-ethnic human rights alliance that is founded by Target Area Development Corporation, that Patricia is the ED of, to respond to racism and social justice by mobilizing people, policy, and ideals for the equitable advancement of people of color, immigrants, and other marginalized communities across Illinois. What I thought we would do in our presentation today is kind of start with what was the kind of driving realization, which I think is also an integral factor in thinking about this work. What is the driving motivation for people to get involved in it in the first place, and where is that coming from? So I want to talk a little bit about that, and then some of the kind of things that have been framing our work for the last 4 years, and then, and I think end with a just specific kind of reflection on the engagement with philanthropy, because we've been in a pretty deep set of conversations with donors since the inception, really, of UCRO. That doesn't mean we've been funded by donors since the beginning, but nonetheless, that conversation has been extraordinarily fruitful. Fruit that looks good. It's not edible yet, but it looks good.
I'm really happy to be here, and just grateful to Michelle Lord and Julie Kohler and Bertha Colon and all the PIP staff. That's been such a great blessing to us. They constantly apologize to us for dragging us all over the country to present, and then there's no funding. But you know what? It doesn't matter to me, because I believe that if we can get our message out, that it's going to shape the way people think in the future. It may not work right now, we may not get what we want right now, but we know that we're building towards something that's greater and larger, and it can be sustained over the long term. Let me just start off by saying, as you know, I'm Patricia Watkins. I am the Executive Director of Target Area Development Corporation, which is a regional grassroots social justice organization. We work in Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan, and we have I used to say a small work in South Africa, but it's really grown as a big work in South Africa. In 2004, we began to look at the condition of the African-American community, because we're largely African-American organization. And we're looking at the research and the research that had recently been put out about what was happening in the black community. And we saw our community as being desolate and like almost dying on the vine when we looked at all the statistics, whether it be health care or health issues, employment, housing, criminal justice. Every area we was impacted terribly. During that period, that was in 2004, we started talking about it and doing an assessment of our work, the work that we were doing. At the same time, we were being nominated to become the organizing group of the year. And we had also formed this coalition called Developing Justice Coalition, which had been very successful at writing bills and passing laws and really getting unusual partners to come on board to move legislation. That year, in 2005, we won $100,000 for being the best organizing group in the city and also having the best coalition in the city. Meanwhile, we were together, myself and my board and senior staff, looking at the fact that the work we was doing was having very little impact on anything, and that we would be dead before any systems change would actually happen based on our work. First of all, we were only largely working on African-American issues, black issues. We looked at the fact, and all the research that showed that we were dying on the vine as a people. Secondly, we looked at the fact that we were only 12% of the population, which means we couldn't put anybody in office, nor could we get anybody out. Our issues that we were defining them very narrowly. Even though they impacted other ethnic groups, other nationalities, other people in the country and around the world, we always define our stuff as simply black. What's happening with black people. Thirdly, when we passed the bill, we passed one bill, they would pass 5. We wouldn't know they passed the 5 until it impacted our neighborhood negatively. And then we rushed back down to Springfield, which is our capital, and began to tell them, why did you all pass this law? We didn't know this law existed. They said, oh, that passed the same day yours did. We couldn't control the follow-up to our campaigns. So we realized that there was a need to have a broad-based movement around justice issues that didn't take into account whether you was black, white, Muslim or Christian or Jewish or Arab or what. It just mattered that you was human, that you had issues that needed to be addressed, and that we needed to start addressing those issues together. We didn't have the human rights language at that time, so we talked about, we had the church, we had the Bible, it said love one another. Talked about brotherhood, being your brother's keeper. We was using all those words because we didn't have the human rights language, which we did get over time as we began to come together. Well, we knew that in order for the work to happen, that we really needed the right groups in the room. And some people, when they build alliances or coalitions, they just, make a cattle call and everybody comes in and whoever's sitting in this seat, that's fine. We knew that wasn't going to work because we were dying on the vine. So we needed people who had visionary leadership skills, the ability to have be visionary and a leader. We also needed people who had come to understand, that had been successful in their own organizations, but had come to understand, like we did, that they would be dead before they had any systemic change. And we wanted groups with integrity. So we start out to find groups like that, and Rami Nashashibi, who from the Inner City Muslim Action Network, was one of the key people that we thought was important to be a part of the campaign, part of this alliance, because he had been a part of the coalition, the Developing Justice Coalition, and they was one of the strongest partners in making sure that we got the policy changes that we needed. And they had so many partnerships around the state and around the country that it was just a powerful partner. But the problem was he was Muslim. And on top of it, he wore that hat, and we didn't know what that meant. You got to, like Ramon said, you got to do something. You got to figure out some kind of way of building relationships that can last. So we stepped back. And, we got Rami and other partners that came together, and we began to start looking at all of our issues and trying to figure out, was there any way for us to weave our common threads?
One thing Patricia hasn't said about herself at this point, and you probably sooner or later discern, she's also an evangelical preacher that speaks in tongues and does all that stuff. And so that was something we had to get over as well.